I grew up as an only child of two therapists, so you could say that I was raised with a deep understanding of emotions and how to express them. What a gift, right? But at the same time, this emotional intelligence ostracized me from my peers. It often made me feel out of place. Add that to being an ADHD girl in the 90s. I really struggled to find where I belonged. I struggled in school, with friendships, and most of all, with finding love for myself. There are so many ways to approach personal growth. Things like journaling or joining the 5 a.m. club or meditating. I know that because I've tried a lot of them. But the truth is, you have to find your thing. If you're trying to follow someone else's formula, it may or may not fit. Welcome back to the Overthinner podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Nikki Sammet, and I am so excited to be with you today. I'm going to be sharing 3 things that have truly changed my life and how I view my place in the world. Last week, you heard Jared talk about his personal development journey and a few things that have truly shaped him, and now it's my turn. There are so many ways to approach personal growth. Things like journaling or joining the 5 a.m. club or meditating. I know that because I've tried a lot of them. But the truth is, you have to find your thing. If you're trying to follow someone else's formula, it may or may not fit. So today I'm sharing what has finally clicked for me, the tools that have helped me unlearn, unmask, and ultimately set myself free. Before I get into all of that, I was thinking I could share a little bit about how I got here and what this journey has looked like. First off, I grew up as an only child of two therapists. So you could say that I was raised with a deep understanding of emotions and how to express them. What a gift, right? But at the same time, this emotional intelligence ostracized me from my peers. It often made me feel out of place. Add that to being an ADHD girl in the 90s. I really struggled to find where I belonged. I struggled in school, with friendships, and most of all, with finding love for myself. Did you know that by the time a person with ADHD is 12 years old, they've heard over 20,000 negative messages, whether that's from parents or educators and even friends? I definitely internalized that. So I built this mask to hide my ADHD self and tried to show up like everybody else. And for a long time, I was able to hold it together. And I'll touch more on masking later. What I realized is because I was never truly myself, I often battled with anxiety and depression for years. But looking back, I now realize that my ADHD was the root cause of all these comorbid conditions. Sometimes I wonder if the choices that I made as I was developing and choosing careers and partners and schools was driven by the masked persona rather than my true self. I have multiple graduate degrees, jobs that I took that I wasn't even interested in, but the money or the status sounded really good. And even relationships with people that I built, were they formed because of this masked persona? The truth being is, in the end, it all makes sense because all of those experiences brought me here. The real turning point for me came in March 2022 when our son Jake was diagnosed autistic. That moment, it ended up being the catalyst for me to truly accept myself and to start showing up authentically in the world. Because in order to love and accept him fully, I had to do the same for myself. And this is ultimately where my whole true journey with self-development began. I had dabbled in it for years before, but nothing really had staying power. But it was when faced with this, a grief, a surprise, a having to rearrange my expectations of myself, of my life, and get really clear on who I was and to unlearn everything that I thought I knew. This is when the real journey began. And what it started with is with IFS therapy. If you're not familiar with IFS therapy, it is called internal family systems. And I found it completely on accident. I had no idea what it was. So I wasn't looking for it when I found it. And I definitely didn't expect it to be as life-changing as it turned out to be. But at the time, I was postpartum with Sydney, newly postpartum with Sydney. I had found a postpartum therapist that had a lot of expertise in working with postpartum mothers, but she just happened to work from that modality. I had done a lot of other therapy in the past, majority within cognitive behavioral therapy, and having a PhD in clinical psychology and having two parents that are therapists, I can be really understimulated within a session. I can get there very quickly and make connections. And so if I don't have a therapist that is truly challenging me, and I want to be clear here, I don't mean in a negative way, but in a challenging me to go deeper, I didn't really get much benefit out of it. And one of the things I learned while in IFS therapy was that a lot of my emotional experience was cognitive. So I was able to accurately express what I was feeling and connect that, but I wasn't feeling it in my body. And you've probably heard Jared talk about this several times about how he has much more of a somatic experience where he feels something first and then he ends up being able to processing it and bring it to his cognitive space. So IFS really allowed me to feel things in my body. She slowed things down for me. She really wanted me to sit within discomfort because that was part of my problem. I didn't sit in the feeling. I'm an action-oriented person, so I would just keep moving forward and I would not necessarily feel the pain. But here's one of the things about being an autism mom is that you have to feel it in order to transform. And so I'll say it again, I'll say it a million times. Autism and being an autism mom has been the greatest gift of my life because of how much of a catalyst it was to me coming back to self. What makes IFS so impactful for me is that it makes these parts of me very tangible. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by abstract emotions, especially being ADHD, I can actually understand them as parts and that each of them have a role to play. And it's brought me just so much clarity. And so today I thought I would just share 5 things that I've learned through IFS therapy. And I have actually a blog post on this. So if you're looking for more detail, and as always, I'd love to connect with you if you have more questions on this. But the first thing that IFS therapy taught me was about understanding my parts. So IFS teaches that we all have parts. These are aspects of our personality. You can also call them subcategories, some personalities that have taken on different roles. Some are protectors, some of them are exiled, some of them are managers. They carry different aspects of who we are based off of our life experiences. So the way that you're reacting to something today, I'll give you an example. I'm a catastrophic thinker, and that's one of my cognitive distortions. But when I've been able to peel that back even further, I now have an understanding of where that part came from and why that part exists. So when there's a hurricane, or we're in the midst of an election, or big life events are occurring around me, I tend to go to extremes. And I've named this part, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But this also comes in contact when I'm feeling shame or sadness or feeling like I'm really just not worthy. So that's the second thing that IFS has taught me is about self-compassion. One of the biggest lessons for me was learning to approach these parts with compassion instead of frustration or judgment. And actually, one of my last sessions with my therapist, we met a new part. And she had said directly to me, until I was ready to meet that part with compassion and curiosity, then it wasn't actually time for me to unveil her. Luckily, I was in a space of curiosity, and so I got to explore a whole new piece of myself that has actually brought me a lot of calm to my center. And so this is brings you to my third point is about healing inner conflict. Through IFS, I've been able to resolve conflicts between my parts. For example, I had parts that were constantly pushing for perfection and others that just wanted to rest. But bringing these together and understanding where each part was coming from and being able to communicate to both of them, that comes, that tangible piece has brought a lot of inner peace. So these parts, it is recommended to name them. And I've named my parts to better connect with them. I have scribble, which is ADHD, and this is a very deep wound for me. And scribble is very deep, deep, deep within and often feels very inadequate. Scribble also can be such a creative force, somebody who truly has a place and an imprint in this world by just showing up as herself, but she hasn't always felt that way due to those internalized messages that I shared earlier. The second is Scout, and Scout was originally what I thought was anxiety. And I envisioned her as this tiny little person. If you know Eden from The Incredibles, I envisioned her this small little person with these huge binoculars, always looking for danger, always wanting to protect me, very anxious part. But what I've come to realize is that Scout is actually the mask that I wear. And Scout is Scribble's protector. So when I learned all these messages as a child, I adopted a new personality, a persona that would allow me to fit in. This is what we call masking, right? So Scout is my mask. And I also have a lot of appreciation for Scout. She truly helped me get to where I am today, but Scout is tired. And so that's another big piece of these parts is that they are not in the driver's seat, but for a lot of us, we let them drive and we let them be the main personality, where our true self, this individual who is at peace and love with self, is the main component. But because self has been buried so deep within us, we don't always give her or him the driver's seat. So there's self, Scout, Scribble. Sparks is the advocate type. She's the individual. If you think about the show or the movie Inside Out, which is my all-time favorite movie, which I think is another reason why I've identified so much with IFS therapy, is of that anger, but it's not necessarily anger for me. It feels more like urgency and advocacy and passion, and also a person that has been hurt and wants to encourage Scribble to show up, where Scout feels a little bit more doubt. And then there's Shade, who carries deep emotions and tends to be my depressive episodes. So now that I know these things about myself, I'm able to distinguish when I'm in these parts, when I'm in these places, and it can help me recognize that this is a moment in time. This is not all of who I am. I can find separation and then I can speak to that part to help determine what it is that they need. So now like that's the last piece of this is this practical application as I'm speaking to. What part needs attention? What does this part need? And being able to do this has been really life-changing. So if you're curious about IFS, I highly recommend you exploring it. Whether you work with a therapist or do some self-study, it has been an absolute powerhouse of a tool for me. I know that it could be for you as well. I'm going to do a deeper dive of IFS in another episode, and I'm planning on bringing somebody on who has a deep expertise. But for now, I just wanted to give you an overview. So next up is human design. I had heard about human design years ago, but at the time I wasn't ready to receive it. A client had told me about it, and I just went in one ear out the other. Another client had talked to me about it years later, but again, it still didn't click. And then one day I was on Instagram, someone shared a story, and somehow it resonated with me. and it came back into my life. And this time I was ready. I tend to think that these are called random moments that are meant to be. But the truth of the matter is when these things come to you, it's because your soul is speaking them out loud. Your soul is calling for you to find them because you're ready to receive them. So the timing was perfect for me. And ultimately, what human design is that it provides a blueprint for how you're meant to operate in the world. And man, when I found out that I was a projector, it's like everything clicked into place for me. For so long, I had been living like a generator and I was constantly pushing myself and I was burning out. So, understanding my design helped me see that I wasn't broken. I was just living in a way that wasn't aligned with who I am. And then couple this with being ADHD and then understanding about my projector design. It was like, what? Mind blowing. For reference, Jared is a generator. And so we have very different energy types. A generator type is going to be able to sustain energy much longer. Whereas a projector type, we aren't meant to do. Projectors are designed to guide and lead, not constantly do. So their essence is to just be and to emulate and to project and to amplify who they are. And while they do that, which is the real work, the right invitations will come to them. In order for you to find out what your human design archetype is, you need your exact date, time, and place of birth. And you can use this information to generate your personal body graph, which then identifies your dominant chakras. And your human design is a system that provides insight into your personality, your energy, how you make decisions. It's phenomenal. Like, and here are some aspects of human design. You have a profile, which is your personality. You have an authority, which is how to make the right decisions for you. You have an energy type, how your energy flows. You have a strategy, how you make things happen most easily, and a not self. So this is when you are living out of alignment. There are different types of human designs. There are projectors, manifesting generators, manifestors, reflectors, and generators. So this is an incredible way for you to understand a way to live in alignment and for you to get to the base of your personal development journey. Last year, I led a workshop on personal development, but I actually started it out in many of the ways that we discussed earlier, which is that there's so many different ways you can go in personal development, but you have to find what works for you. And so using human design for me has been a really instrumental piece of that because I know how I work. It's even changed the way I work out. I don't do HIIT workouts. That's not sustainable for me to do, but doing other types of strength training fits my energy type. So you'll learn your blueprint, the type that you are, how your energy moves. Like, learning how to honor my energy cycles has been a really big shift. Now I really try to give myself permission to rest without feeling so much guilt. And then waiting for invitations is my strategy. I used to be so much more about like going after. But projectors thrive when they wait for the right invitations rather than trying to force things to happen. It's a practice in patience, which I don't have, but it's brought so much peace into my life and it's really allowed me to live in alignment. So, embracing my design, I've let go of trying to prove myself through constant action. And I've learned to trust my natural strengths and live in alignment of who I am. I'd love to introduce you more about human design. I do plan on having a longer episode in the future that will be specifically on this topic with an expert in human design. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, you can look up your own chart online and start learning about your type. And you can also go onto What Nick Knows blog. I will link it in the show notes for you to explore a little bit more about what this means. So the last area that has been exceptionally life-changing for me is writing. The thing is that writing has always been part of my life. As a kid, I used to create cartoon strips, write stories, and even make up plays. I actually even went to writing camp. I've loved writing. But as I grew up, I started to doubt myself and I didn't think I was smart enough. So I put writing away. But still, I found myself coming back to it, whether that was just in a journal myself or starting a blog or Pax the Dude or creative projects or my coaching practice. But recently, as of September of 2023, writing became everything. It became a place where I could unload my grief, not just from Pax's passing, but of autism diagnosis, my own struggles with neurodiversity, motherhood, everything in between. And it was a place for me to not only release, but it was a place for me to relearn and a place for me to transform. I actually created a space in my walk-in closet where it used to just be shoes, but I put a small desk in my closet and I would spend my late nights and during the day in this closet where I would write and share and cry and breathe and be. And I saged down the room before I started that with the promise that I would never make that room about professional development, only personal. So where I'm recording right now is in our office, in our studio space. But during that time, I was always in my closet. And then one day, when I felt that I had really done a lot of work that had brought me from underground to the present, I found myself just naturally come into the office and start being in here. I have now over 190,000 words in my document called What Nick Knows. And I've shared some of these snippets on Instagram. I've shared some of this stuff on Medium. I've shared some of this stuff on my blog, but it has really been a personal transformational experience for me. And so here are 5 reasons I've been reflecting. And I was like, why has writing been so transformative to me? Because I have encouraged clients in the past to write, but it wasn't until I really did it myself that I saw the benefits. So, first, it's a tool for reflection. Like, for example, if Jared and I got into a fight or if something came up that really just pinched something within me, I would go upstairs and write. So it helped me reflect on what I was feeling and experiencing. It was like a mirror for my thoughts. Secondly, it allowed me to process emotions. It was a way for me to get through grief or excitement or fear, right? Through writing, I can even connect with my IFS parts and let them express themselves. I've even started writing sometimes within that tone of that personality. Also, ultimately it's a creative outlet. It is my main creative outlet. For me, writing is my meditation. It is something that I do consistently every single day at very specific times of the day. It is something that I do as a built-in habit to self. It is something that is just so imperative for my well-being that it is a become a I don't want to say it's a movement of meditation, but it's definitely a mindfulness meditation for me is writing. And it has allowed me to release what's inside. It's also so cool to look back. So, like the fourth piece is tracking growth. One of the most rewarding things about writing is being able to look back and see how far I've come. And it's a record of my journey. And I love that. And most of all, therapeutic benefits. Writing has been my therapy. Besides, the weeks that I'm in therapy, it's been really a place, a cathartic release and a place for me to be with self and to gain new perspectives. So writing has always been a part of my life, but it wasn't until recently that I realized just how powerful it could be. And I'll continue to talk about writing in future episodes, but I wanted to share how much it's helped me. So those are 3 things that have truly changed my life: IFS therapy, human design, and writing. If any of these resonate with you, I really encourage you to explore these tools for yourself. And remember, personal development looks different for everyone. You have to find what works for you. As I mentioned before, if you want to dive deeper into any of these topics, I've written about some of them on my blog, and I'll be exploring them further in future episodes. But growth is a journey. It's about taking one step at a time. So I want to thank you for joining me on my first solo episode. I hope that sharing these tools sparks something in you. I'd love to hear what those things are for you. What are your things, or what are things that you're developing or interested in, and what your thoughts and experiences were from this episode. So feel free to reach out to us on social media at Overdone Podcast, or email the overdinnerpodcast@gmail.com, or you can even reach out to me through What Nick Knows website. And I had just had a thought that I wanted to share with you. And before we wrap up, it's a note about personal transformation. And it came to me because as I'm sitting here at this desk, a bee just flew by. And bees have become a symbol of change and growth for me and breakthroughs. If you've listened to previous episodes where the bees were I had the black wasp situation, bees have really been a part of my personal and professional experience. I used to be very afraid of bees, and sometimes I still am. But over the past few years, I've started to see them differently. I notice that they show up in my life when I'm on the verge of transformation and change, and they're reminding me that it's okay to embrace it, even when it's uncomfortable. So I used to fear bees, but now I welcome them as messengers guiding me through change. So I'd like to leave you with a question. What are signs or symbols that show up for you in your life when you're about to grow or change? And the reason I want to ask the question is because it's a great way for you to start to tap in to self. Who am I? Where am I? What do I need? What part is in place? And so utilizing this and seeing, what you're feeling and where it shows up in your body, and how it cognitively expresses itself can be a really powerful tool. So maybe it's a reoccurring thought or feeling or something from nature, but pay attention to those moments, because they're your body, or I guess the universe, signaling that you're on the cusp of something new. So I challenge you to reflect on it this week. And I also encourage you to think about what transformations are happening in your life right now and how you can embrace them instead of resisting them. It is really uncomfortable to lean into change, even though I'm on this other side of where I was prior. I still sometimes find myself back in the old ways, because leaning into change is uncomfortable, right? But it can be a slow process of these little moments, of these little signs, of these little expressions, because growth is happening even when you can't fully see it yet. So if you feel inspired, I'd love for you to share your symbol of transformation with me on social media or in the comments in my blog. But let's keep this conversation going. And remember, you are not alone in this journey of personal development. It is the human experience to grow and change and evolve. And oh, there's another bee. Hello, bee. But we're all growing and evolving together. It has been my absolute honor to be with you today. I appreciate you taking your time to do something for yourself. And until next time, thanks for listening to the Over Dinner Podcast.